Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. In this weekly box office roundup video for the weekend that ended on November 17th, 2024, one new movie made it into this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office. And the domestic cumulative total earnings for these top 5 movies rose to $56.3 million, which was a 14.35% increase over last weekend's corrected domestic cumulative total of $49.2 million. So in reality, last weekend was the first time in 10 weekends that the top 5 domestic movies' cumulative total box office earnings fell below $50 million. But this weekend was the 10th consecutive weekend in which the domestic top 5 cumulative total earnings were below $100 million. But before proceeding, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please leave a comment, please subscribe to support this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! So this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office included the following. Opening at number 1 was 7 Bucks Productions, Chris Morgan Productions, Detective Agency's Amazon MGM Studios, and MGM Pictures' very high-budgeted Christmas action comedy entitled Red One, starring Dwayne Johnson, Chris Evans, and Lucy Liu. Falling to number 2 was Columbia Pictures, Marvel Entertainment's, and several other companies' Marvel threequel, Venom: The Last Dance. Clinging to number 3 was the comedy entitled The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, which still sounds like an awful Hallmark Christmas movie, but was actually produced by Kingdom Story Company, Media Capital Technologies, Lionsgate, Luminous Studios, and Fletchett Entertainment. Falling to number 4 was A24's horror movie entitled Heretic. And falling to number 5 was Universal Pictures and DreamWorks Animation's movie entitled The Wild Robot. Red One opened by earning $34.1 million domestically and $50 million internationally for a global gross opening weekend box office total of $84.1 million. I'll be talking more about this movie later in the video, including its possible future box office earnings. Domestically, Venom: The Last Dance earned another $7.4 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $127.6 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $29.1 million to bring its current international box office total up to $308.5 million. So globally, the movie earned another $42.2 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $436.1 million. Domestically, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever earned another $5.4 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $20 million, but the movie has no international earnings. Domestically, Heretic earned another $5.2 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $20.4 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $2.4 million to bring its current international box office total up to $5 million. So globally, the movie earned another $11.8 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $25.4 million. Domestically, The Wild Robot earned another $4.3 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $137.8 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $9.1 million to bring its current international box office total up to $170.7 million. So globally, the movie earned another $16 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $308.5 million. And as of this weekend, the 3 highest grossing movies, both domestically and worldwide, for 2024 remained Disney Pixar's animated movie Inside Out 2, Disney and Marvel Studios' MCU movie Deadpool and Wolverine, and Illumination Entertainment's animated sequel Despicable Me 4. Domestically, Inside Out 2 ended its theatrical run, so its final domestic box office total remains at $653 million, and it's only one of 2 movies that have broken $600 million domestically in 2024. But internationally, the movie earned another $938,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $1,045.1 million. So globally, the movie's current global gross box office total increased by the same amount to $1,698 million, and it remains the first and only movie so far this year to break $1.6 billion worldwide. It also remains the first movie to have broken $1 billion worldwide in 2024, but it's not the only movie to have done so. Further, Inside Out 2 has now earned $252.4 million, more than last year's highest-grossing movie, Barbie, which earned $1,445.6 million. In terms of estimated break-even points, Inside Out 2 has a reported production budget of $200 million, which, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget, yields an estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. Thus, Inside Out 2 has most definitely made bank. Domestically, Deadpool and Wolverine has ended its theatrical run, so its current domestic box office total remains at $636.7 million, and it remains the second highest grossing movie domestically so far this year, and also only the second movie to break $600 million domestically. Deadpool and Wolverine is also the highest-grossing R-rated movie domestically of all time by having surpassed the domestic box office earnings of 2004's The Passion of the Christ during the weekend of August 11th. Internationally, the movie earned another $71,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $701.1 million. So the movie's current global gross box office total rose by the same amount up to $1,337.9 million, which keeps it as only the second movie so far this year to break $1 billion globally. Deadpool and Wolverine is also the highest-grossing R-rated movie worldwide of all time by having outperformed the global earnings of 2019's R-rated movie entitled Joker during the weekend of August 18th. In terms of the MCU, Deadpool and Wolverine became the franchise's sixth highest-grossing movie worldwide of all time by outperforming the $1,336.5 million that was earned in 2018 by the movie Black Panther. It's also the first MCU movie since 2021's Spider-Man No Way Home to break $1 billion at the global box office. And with its reported production budget of $250 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million. Clearly, Deadpool and Wolverine has already made bank. Domestically, Despicable Me 4 has also ended its theatrical run, so its final domestic box office total remains at $361 million. But internationally, the movie earned another $711,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $607.2 million. So the movie's current global gross box office total rose by the same amount up to $968.2 million, which keeps it as only the third movie so far this year to break $900 million globally. And for Despicable Me 4, with its reported production budget of $100 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $250 million to $300 million respectively. Thus, Despicable Me 4 has already made bank. I'm also tracking several other movies that are no longer in or never were in the top 5, which includes the following. Falling to number 13 in its 11th weekend in theaters was Plan B Entertainment, Tim Burton, Warner Brothers, and several other companies' movie entitled Beetlejuice. Clinging to number 17 in its 9th weekend in theaters is Paramount Animation's, Hasbro Entertainment's, and New Republic Pictures' animated movie Transformers 1. Domestically, Beetlejuice earned another $225,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $294 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $385,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $156.9 million. So globally, the movie earned another $857,000 to bring its current global gross box office total up to $450.9 million. Domestically, Transformers 1 earned another $68,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $59 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $36,000 to bring its current international box office total up to $69.8 million. So globally, the movie earned another $169,000 to bring its current global gross box office total up to $128.9 million. Now, to know whether these movies are going to break even or not, as well as how much money they might be losing, we need to estimate their break-even points. When a movie's marketing budget is known, we can add it to the movie's production budget and then multiply the sum by 2. Otherwise, we can multiply the production budget by 2.5 for a single mid-range estimated break-even point, or by both 2.5 and 3.0 for a broader estimated break-even point range. Both methods account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves. For Red 1, with its reported very high production budget of $250 million, as reported by Variety, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million. For Venom: The Last Dance, with its production budget of $120 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $300 million to $360 million. For The Wild Robot, with its production budget of $78 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $195 million to $234 million. For Beetlejuice, with its reported production budget of $100 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $250 million to $300 million. For Transformers 1, with its reported production budget of $75 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $187.5 million to $225 million. So in this video, I am no longer projecting or never have projected what the final domestic or global gross box office earnings might be for the movies Beetlejuice or Transformers 1, because their expected future earnings are either currently too small, possibly non-existent, or going unreported, or their projected earnings aren't much higher than their current earnings. Of course, Beetlejuice has already made bank. But for Transformers 1, with its reported global gross box office earnings of $128.9 million and its estimated break-even point range of $187.5 million to $225 million, the movie currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $58.6 million to $96.1 million in global gross box office revenue. Then by dividing the global gross box office revenue losses by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, the affected studios currently stand to lose the following. For Transformers 1, Paramount Animation, Hasbro Entertainment, and New Republic Pictures currently stand to lose somewhere on the order of $29.3 million to $48.1 million. And that now brings us to the movies whose final domestic and global gross box office revenues I am currently projecting, which includes Red 1, Venom: The Last Dance, and The Wild Robot. For Red 1, given its very high production budget, I decided to estimate a range of average weekly drops for the movie using statistical calculations based on 9 previous movies that premiered between 2013 and 2022 that starred Dwayne Johnson, in which he had top billing and wasn't part of a broader recurring ensemble cast. That excluded the Fast and Furious franchise movies, but allowed me to include Snitch, G.I. Joe Retaliation, Hercules, San Andreas, Central Intelligence, Baywatch, Jumanji: The Next Level, Jungle Cruise, and Black Adam. These 9 movies have an overall average weekly drop of 32.01% with a standard deviation of 6.64%. From which I can create a range of possible average weekly drops for Red 1 from 25.37% to 38.66%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $88.1 million at the low end, $106.3 million at the mid-range, and $133.6 million at the upper end. 2 of the 9 Dwayne Johnson movies that I had cited earlier that had domestic opening weekend box office earnings that were very similar to those for Red 1 have final domestic box office earnings that fall within that projected range. 2016's Central Intelligence, whose final domestic box office earnings were $127.4 million, and 2021's Jungle Cruise, whose final domestic box office earnings were $117 million. Then using the movie's current domestic share of 40.53%, I can project that its final global gross box office earnings may range from $217.5 million at the low end, $262.4 million at the mid-range, and $329.7 million at the upper end, which is higher than the final global gross box office earnings for 2016's Central Intelligence and 2021's Jungle Cruise, whose domestic shares were much higher at 58.68% and 55.58% respectively. However, given the movie's very high estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million, Red 1 currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $295.3 million to $532.5 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that 7 Bucks Productions, Chris Morgan Productions, Detective Agency, Amazon MGM Studios, and MGM Pictures currently stand to lose around $147.6 million to $266.3 million. So Red 1 could potentially become the biggest flop for 2024, since its current projected losses are on par with those of this year's current biggest flop, Argyle, whose losses range from $201.9 million to $251.9 million based on my own calculations. For Venom: The Last Dance, this is the 17th Marvel movie for Columbia Pictures, which started to produce Marvel movies in 1997 with the first Men in Black movie. So using the past 16 movies' combined average weekly drop of 34.19% and a standard deviation of 9.76%, that creates a range of possible average weekly drops for this movie from 24.44% to 43.95%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $144.3 million at the low end, $152.7 million at the mid-range, and $167.3 million at the upper end, which is lower than last week's projection. And using the movie's current domestic share of 29.26%, which is slightly higher than last week, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $493.2 million at the low end, $522 million at the mid-range, and $571.9 million at the upper end, which is lower than last week's projection. But Venom: The Last Dance has already fully broken even and made bank. For The Wild Robot, using a range of possible average weekly draws from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $148.1 million at the low end, $150.5 million at the mid-range, and $153.5 million at the upper end, which is slightly higher than last week's projection. And using the movie's current domestic share of 44.67%, which is about the same as last week, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $331.6 million at the low end, $336.8 million at the mid-range, and $343.6 million at the upper end, which is slightly higher than last week's projection. So given the movie's estimated break-even point range of $195 million to $234 million and its current global gross box office earnings, the movie has already made bank. So as of this weekend, Red 1 joins Transformers 1 as a definite flop, while Venom: The Last Dance, The Wild Robot, Beetlejuice, Deadpool and Wolverine, Inside Out 2, and Despicable Me 4 have all made bank. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to each and every one of you who has subscribed to support this channel. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, and Blue Sky by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.